when we've raised the standard of our consciousness to the point that the source of creation is actually a thing. Like that's something that we have names for and that we're completely familiar with the direct experience of it, and it becomes an integral part of everyday experience, then the breaking down process is absolutely going home to source. The problem has been in the past with our dear ancestors who didn't even have words for transcending. They had a word for God, but for a lot of our ancestors, the word for God didn't even really mean the transcendent the way we understand it from direct experience, right? It was more like God was like a sort of judgmental father figure up in heaven, and you couldn't ever really connect with him unless you were, you know, following certain behaviors or something. And it was much more complicated for our ancestors in a lot of ways. I mean, not all of them. Of course, there have always been those few, right, who were very close to the transcendent when they were born and they came into the lifetime and they were able to give good expression to it and so forth. But for the majority of individuals, that source was not a thing. It couldn't be seen or heard or tasted or smelled or touched, and therefore it did not exist. So as a result, those individuals, when they got into that part of the cycle where the dissolution is taking place, it didn't feel like going home. It just felt like lack. It felt like losing. They're just losing everything that they liked and that they wanted, or there's some big purification is ripping something away from them that they wanted. So we're in a better position now. Feels like that would be a good moment for an ancestral healing, right? Because that's what the parents experienced. Okay, so we're going to take our attention, our big collective attention, and we're going to focus it in to the ancestral archive. That's at the DNA level. So we're going back into those cells again and back into the subcellular and down into the molecular level of the cells, where we find the structures that were given to us by our ancestors, those codes, which are the very expressions of their physiologies as well. And the first thing happening, of course, is that beautiful reverent love for the ancestors and all that they are and all that they've done and all that they continue to do from wherever they are, whatever level of their existence. And the next thing that I'm feeling, I'm just calling it as I see it, the next thing I feel happening is forgiveness. And I feel as if this forgiveness, in a sense, is sort of folding back into their own natures. I mean, of course, we love them, but for them, there's a little bit of a sense of, you know, somehow I managed to get myself down into this rabbit hole where I was born at a certain time in history, and I was in a family where the traditions of understanding didn't include concepts of the transcendental field of ocean of pure consciousness as myself. And so, that somehow they managed to dig themselves down into that spot. And what we're able to provide for them is we're shining the light of a broader perspective, which then uplifts the standard of their consciousness. And that light is the light of this principle that we looked at before, which is souls over and over again will sometimes choose a slower path or a harder path in order to enjoy the detail. Because even if they didn't have a word for transcendental consciousness or the source of creation as such, we all know they experienced it. And so it was there at a very sweet, innocent, underlying, it was there almost like at that point in the beginning of the curve from the absolute up. It was so tender and so abstract for them without even a word to describe it, that it remained throughout the lifetime a very, very innocent, delicate, it remained in its purity in a way. It remained very, very pure for them. And so we're shining that light for them so they can see it. They can see that it was there, and they can see that the sacrifices they made at a relative level of their existence, which meant that almost every time something had to change or had to happen or something, it was a big suffering for everybody. They did that so that they could have a lifetime where they experienced that source of self in such a sustained delicacy. Such a sustained delicacy. Seeing them, as we see that in the ancestors, the level of gratitude for what they did, for having chosen to live and die in periods of history where there was less understanding and there was much harder quality of life. The gratitude is flowing to them, and it seems to be flowing directly to the heart. That's the first spot that's receiving, directly to the heart. For a lot of them, I'm starting to see the whole digestive system open up, and now the gratitude, it flows from us, from our hearts, seeing from the heart, into that part of their cells where consciousness just starts to emerge. It just starts. So that loving gratitude goes to that spot in their physiologies that's literally the physical expression of that which they selected in that lifetime. Their selection. To not really know the transcendent any more than as the most fine abstract feeling. And there, I'm feeling a little, like it's massaging it or something. There's a little activity there. It's a little Agni is there. Just a little Agni is there. So the Agni is being fed by the soma at that level. It's very good in their physiologies, So what we're doing, you guys, is we are creating a healing for ourselves and for our ancestors, which restructures our own ability to produce the finest grade of soma in our physiologies, and we're doing it back for multiple generations so that it's integrated now in our physiologies now. So we don't have to wait for this to manifest. We're breaking it down, we're looking at the detail. So, and our ancestors are helping us because they are also breaking down the experience and they are also experiencing the detail. It's a beautiful team effort. And what I'm loving about this, my brain feels like it's popping right now. What I'm loving about this is that this is a technology that we are being offered right now, which is, as I mentioned before, sometimes when people have the need, the intellectual, mental, emotional need to see in detail very finely what is going on, remember that Saturn energy, how the manifesting process is happening, and this can create barriers and boundaries to instant manifestation and instant gratification. Now what we can do is we can engage the teamwork of our own collective level of self. We can engage with the ancestors. We can also engage, I'm getting a yes on this, with previous incarnations and previous physiologies to allow each member of our collective to work on some piece or some facet, some aspect of whatever that intention is that we want to manifest and fulfill. So if each person works on their own little piece, then what happens is the whole thing manifests up fairly quickly. And the need to understand the details is also satisfied at the same time. That's good. That's good. Thank you. Thank you guys for being brilliant. That was beautiful. I loved it. Okay. Very cool.